Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go after the lefts, we go after the rights, we go after the middle and independents, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, January 31st, 2024. Can't believe we made it. But welcome to How the Frack We Got Here, the show that basically gives you all the news, but allows you to make up your own mind. As we usually start this, guys, really in a different way because I've completely messed up the intro, but that's okay. What we basically do, guys, is as we always do during the middle of the week, try to give you information that you can use. We only, in the sake of great journalism, do we always take our information from reputable sources with award-winning research and journalism awards. We do not do sensational news like Fox News or The Blaze or whatever extreme left or extreme right resource sites out there. We give you just the news, just the facts, only facts, and that's about it. So, also, there may be times that, although we do try to remain professional, words do fly. At the same time, there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers. So, viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, how do we actually start this? Well, there's only one way to really start this because, as you guys have known, there's only two major subjects that are being talked about right now. One is Taylor Swift. The other is about the border and the bullshit reason that the GOP uses to scare mostly white people. I kid you not.
The influx of migrants continues at the southern border. Washington hoping a deal to stem the tide could be close.
If that bill were the law today, I'd shut down the border right now and fix it quickly.
President Biden and lawmakers working on a bipartisan deal to expand the president's authority at the border. Lawmakers hopeful it can pass.
We do have a bipartisan deal. We're finishing the text right now.
This despite former President Trump opposing the deal.
I'd rather have no bill than a bad bill. A bad bill you can't have.
Mr. Trump condemning the deal in a flurry of Truth Social posts over the weekend, claiming without evidence there will be major terror attacks if migrants continue to come in. Other Republicans pushing back.
Donald Trump, the last thing he needs to do is tell them to wait to pass a border deal until the election. We can't wait one more day.
And it comes as Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott is in a standoff with the federal government, denying federal agents access to an area in Eagle Pass that's been the epicenter of the migrant surge. Now surrounded by a fence and razor wire, the state even adding more razor wire after last week, a Supreme Court ruling gave Border Patrol agents the power to remove it. Republican governors from 25 states signing a letter supporting Texas.
Texas should stand their ground.
All this as House Republicans unveil articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Republicans allege that Mayorkas displayed a refusal to comply with the law and accuse him of making false statements and knowingly obstructing lawful oversight of the Department of Homeland Security. DHS blasting the move, calling it an unconstitutional, evidence-free impeachment.
And whether that immigration deal moves forward is an open question since President Trump is opposing it. He has said it would be, quote, a gift for President Biden in an election year. But other Republicans are saying that this is the best deal that the party is going to get. Hoda.
All right, Guad Venegas.
Okay, so for all those that have been under a rock or have not, or basically you've been having a busy life be life, and we know this. But yes, the southern border. We've had influx of immigrants to come across the border. Texas decided in all of its wisdom, they were going to put up razor wire. That razor wire led to the deaths of several immigrants that were trying to cross, but wound up actually being drowned. Governor Greg Abbott decided to defy the president, saying that no, we're not only going to take down the razor wire, we're going to increase it. This led to Biden administration actually suing the state and actually getting the Supreme Court to basically give the president the power to basically go into the state of Texas to have government agents remove the razor wire. Governor Greg Abbott is still preventing those individuals from going in there, removing the razor wire, And if you've been on social media, mostly TikTok, you've probably seen truckers, people with trucks, farmers all standing with Biden. Even those from the great state of Florida have decided to go over and go assist with being the blockade. And with all that being said, Biden has sat there and done something that I never thought I'd see a Democratic president do. He actually challenged the GOP. Well, he wasn't the only one, but I didn't expect that out of Biden. I mean, I've seen Obama challenge GOP. I've seen Clinton challenge GOP. But Biden, in his first presidential term, challenged GOP because what has the GOP has always been saying? Oh, we got to do something about immigration. They're coming over the border. We need a wall put up. We need this. We need guards. We need razor wire. We need this. And it's kind of strange from a land of immigrants, from a land that was founded by immigrants, that you're going to tell immigrants that they can't come across the border. It's not like America is full. That being said, however, we are seeing the news that a lot of these conservative red states are actually busing or flying migrants to sanctuary states and cities where they are being overrun, New York being one of them, to where resources are quite thin. Again, they're basically crashing whatever infrastructure that they have to either prove a point. But getting back to what Biden was saying, Biden was pretty much saying, basically, give me an immigration deal and I'll shut down the border. This is where the GOP does its best work, by simply doing nothing. Because if you guys haven't noticed, or if you've been listening to my podcast, which again, I thank you if you have, I have been saying that the GOP don't care. They don't care about anything except power and their own ideologies. They don't care about immigrants because, again, when Trump himself, which was the longest 4 years of a presidency we ever had, when he was president, you heard not one iota about immigration being a problem. I mean, yeah, sure, you heard about the wall. Sure, you heard that certain parts of it was up, and that even though the parts of the wall that was put up, that they showed how easily the wall can be scaled, or the fact of the matter is that a lot of people realize immigrants are not just climbing the wall, they're taking flights. They're coming in through other means of transportation. But during that Republican administration, you heard very little about immigration reform. Very little. Trump's never mentioned it. Because every time Trump says it, what does he always say? Oh, they're sending the West. They're sending the murderers, the rapists. They're sending their worst. And even now, he still says it. So I always find it funny whenever I hear Latinos for Trump or any other type of immigrants for Trump. I always stand and say they must be rich or have a business because that's the only reason I can see they vote for him. But again, we've never heard immigration reform from the GOP during a Republican presidential administration. Switch to Democrat. GOP loves to do this. We're going to point out the problem. And the problem is in Texas, in Florida, in New Mexico, in California, they're coming over our border. These immigrants, they're coming in by the thousands. What's the problem? Because in my mind, I hear this all the time. I hear this from conservatives all the time. This is a problem. How so? You have immigrants that are coming over, escaping war-torn areas, areas that are famine, areas that, are less ideal for individuals to live in. So they come to America. Again, America has a broken immigration system, much like we have a broken veteran affairs system. But the GOP always loves to say this. Well, we need a plan. Biden sat there and said, okay, give me one. You give me you back the immigration plan that's being put out there. I'll shut down the border. And that was the one time the GOP felt silent. And that, ladies and gentlemen, tells you everything you want to know when it comes to conservatives and immigration reform. They don't care. As long as it's a talking point. And you even heard Trump turn around and sit there and say, well, don't give this to Biden. This will be a win for votes. Because and again, for all his lunacy and stupidity, he has a point. Because if the immigration reform problem was solved under a Democratic president, could that give Biden the win for a second term? Yes. President Obama tried to do it under the DREAM Act. When he had the DREAM Act out there, what was a path to citizenship, where again, it wasn't a picture perfect plan, but it was something for immigration, for a path to citizenship, for immigrants to follow. GOPs tore that up. How dare we give them a path to citizenship? How dare we ask them to serve in our army, and then after they've served, they got a path to be an American citizen? How dare you do this? This is the same party that went after a president for wearing a tan suit. So again, fast forward now to 2024. We still have an immigration problem. And I'll keep repeating this about the immigration problem. The GOP, the Conservative Party, they love problems. They love problems when they're not the head of the administration. Because they could sit there and say, see, Biden didn't do anything about immigration. That's why we know we can do it. Okay, let's go down memory lane, shall we? Bush 1.0, when immigration was still an issue, you did nothing about the immigration system. Then 2.0, Bush 2.0 was in. You didn't do anything about the immigration system. You got to Trump. Again, did nothing about the immigration system. If you go back in history, from the start of the 21st century, if you go back in time, look at every Republican administration and look what they've done about immigration. You'll find nothing. Look at every Democratic administration since the turn of the century. Every administration has tried to put forward an immigration package to fix the immigration system. And every time the GOP, the Conservative Party, shot it down, but offered no alternatives. So the party that says they can do better has shown nothing. Nothing. And I've said before, I can't imagine being a conservative trying to run this year on what accomplishments have you done? Because that's going to be the problem. What accomplishments have you done to where you can sit there and tell these people, yes, you can vote for me again. Yes, you can vote for the party. You can vote for the GOP party because we get things done. You really don't. Even now with this Congress that's actually in there, you guys have proven that all you've done was accuse, point fingers, set up committees, and investigate the people who went after your former would-be dictator in his mind, Donald Trump. Even more so, talking about the immigration system, which, by the way, it can be fixed. But any plan that's put out there, like I said at best, why not fix the immigration system? Because right now, the Department of Immigration, woefully underfunded, which it is, woefully underfunded. Forget the fact of immigration lawyers, counsels, personnel, judges, woefully underfunded. But imagine, if you will, that they were given the same budget as the Department of Defense. Worlds would change, wouldn't it? In the same sense I say about the Department of Veteran Affairs. If the Department of Veteran Affairs had the same budget and the same personnel increase as, say, the IRS or even the Department of Defense, it's a world of change. But then again, that's a solution to a problem. And as we know about the GOP, they don't provide solutions, but they love problems because they can use those problems as scare tactics. And they can use those problems, especially on the Fox News side, to talk about what they would do. But like I said, many times, Fox News is not a news station. It is a propaganda, state news, entertainment center to scare its audience. That's pretty much it. But even more so, this is how bad the GOP has done. They have basically sat there and want to go after the department, the DHS secretary, which is, if you haven't figured that out by now, of course, I wish I could show this gentleman right here, but the secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, they want to go after Alexandria Mayorkas for this. And what I'm about to show you is the crazy part. The man that's about to be talking is the man they want to impeach.
You've been in this job since the start of the administration. I think you take heat on a lot of issues. You have a massive agency that draws heat on just about everything that you guys do. The idea of impeachment proceedings starting, does that affect you at all on a personal? I know you work and you're going to continue to do the work, but what do you think when you see that?
You know, Phil, I come to the office every morning, and I am surrounded by incredibly talented and dedicated people. And it is extraordinarily motivating to see the work they do, to witness firsthand their selflessness, their talent, their tireless dedication. Many sacrifice a tremendous amount. That's what I think about. And I'm incredibly proud to work alongside them and to support them in advancing the mission of the Department of Homeland Security on behalf of the American people under President Biden's leadership. That's what I think about every day. And I'm incredibly proud of coming to work every day and leaving the office as late as it might be, having done the work with such extraordinary people.
Sorry, that man right there that you just heard talking, that is the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. And the Republicans want to go after him. And they want to go after him because, number one, it's easy. It's easy clickbait. Oh, well, he's not doing his job. Immigrants have been coming in. And keep in mind, it's the Department of Homeland Security, the office that Republicans installed. And sometimes I'm still trying to figure out why the Department of Homeland Security is around. I'm still trying to figure out why the Space Force is still around. You would think after Trump left, there's two things that should have been dismantled a long time ago, and it should have been those two departments. But I digress. They want to go after this man, impeach him for failure of his duties. And I'm just like, you set him up to fail. And even honestly, he's not failing because he sat there and said at the time of his installment that they do need personnel. They do need more funding. They need all these things to solve the immigration problem. And yet we've seen what happens in Congress right now, where you have a Republican-led House and a barely led Democratic Senate. And at the same time, you have a landlocked government. And the thing that's always mystified me is that when you have one party that controls one house, the other party controls the other house. If there's a deadlock situation, why does it never go to the people? Like, here's my thing, and I'm just going to throw this out there. Say, for instance, there is a bill that benefits the American people, and the House and the Senate approves it. It goes to the House denies it, goes back to the Senate, they approve it again, and it has to take a 2/3 majority to get over the House, to bypass the House, to go to the president's desk. Let's just say if it's deadlocked, why aren't the people actually used as a third person? And then why not expand on voting? Why? Because it's crazy. And again, if I'm alone in this branch, let me know. Politicians supposedly do a lot more voting on issues and passing laws, which we know half of that's true because look at the GOP getting paid for doing nothing. That being said, however, the fact that they vote on many issues and yet the American people are only called to vote once every election period for the president and another for the House of Representatives, and then locally also mix it in for local and state elections as well. Why not are the American people being brought in for voting? If we really want to show how effective voting is, then why not make in these deadlock situations the people be the third party? And at the same time, if the people are the third party and whatever they says goes, has to go straight to the president's desk. I think if that was an option, a lot of stuff would move forward. But I also believe that if nothing is getting handled, that anybody that works in Congress should be getting paid the minimum wage rate. Should. That's all I'm saying. But again, we should not be surprised about what's going on with the border because, again, GOP loves a problem. They'll keep making it a problem despite whoever comes up with a solution because it didn't come from them. But moving right along, guys, President Biden does got a lot on his plate, especially with the fact that 3 service members were attacked by an Iranian drone. And I was fearing this, but I guess if you're a chicken hawk or a warmonger, you're going to love the news.
He's made a decision about how to respond to the deadly drone attack. The 3 U.S. service members killed have now been identified. As U.S. officials say, American personnel may have mistaken the enemy drone for one of their own. Again, this is a decision about how to respond to the deadly drone attack on a U.S. base in Jordan. President Biden says he holds Iran responsible.
Yes. President, Iran responsible for the death of those 3 Americans. I do hold them responsible in the sense that they're supplying the weapons to the people who did it.
You just heard President Biden there saying he holds Iran responsible. Foreign correspondent Marcus Moore joins me now from Jordan, along with senior White House correspondent Selena Wang and ABC News national security analyst Mick Mulroy for more on this. Selena, I want to start with you. The president there says he has decided how to respond. What else are you hearing there at the White House?
Yeah, exactly. As we were all asking questions to the president before his departure to Florida, the key line there is that he has decided how to respond to that deadly attack, but he wouldn't say whether or not he holds Iran directly responsible, but he did say that they supply the weapons. Now, the White House has been clear that there is no easy solution here. The president wants to respond in a way that's forceful enough to stop these future attacks from these Iranian-backed groups, but not in a way that spreads this conflict. Now, a senior U.S. official tells ABC News that the president has some serious misgivings about directly attacking at Iran. U.S. officials tell me that this response could come in stages and multiple steps so that they can target multiple different areas. Now, look, the president here, he's been meeting with his national security team. Clearly, he's already made up his mind. The question is how far he's going to go, because the previous U.S. responses, they have not stopped these continued attacks. There have been more than 160 attacks on U.S. forces in the region. We expect the president will go further than before, but just how far is the big question.
Well, I mean, the big question is, it's like, do we do sanctions or are we going to do retaliatory strikes? Let's be honest, it's probably going to be the latter. Again, America is a war profit machine. Do we need another war? We really don't. Keep in mind that, yes, we're still helping Ukraine. Yes, for some odd reason, we're still helping that country. Because if I say the country that we're talking about, then, Zuckerberg and everybody else will sit there and say that I'm inciting war, which I'm not. I'm only pointing out that between two certain countries in a certain region seem to always have this problem for ages, and yet we got dragged into it because one of those countries is unfortunately a welfare queen of the United States. So I think I said all that without actually tripping over any Zuckerberg landmines. But again, I feel like retaliatory strikes are going to happen, and I feel like we're going to be again in another theater of war. And it's like, and they wonder why they're having such a hard time with troop enlistments, even to the point to where the draft may be considered. People don't want to go to war. It really is the truth. Young people don't want to go to war because, well, we've seen what happened with Iraq and Afghanistan, and we don't want to repeat. But we shall see what Mr. Biden may consider. Like I said before, every GOP was like, "Oh, well, we need to send in the troops." You can't send in the troops like you're playing Army. But then again, what do you expect from chicken hawks? But sticking on Biden for a second, because guys, I have been saying this about Biden, especially because even though Biden is running again for the nomination, yes, there are people on the Democratic side that are still running for the Democratic nomination, but I've always said this about Biden. He is going to have a hard time with minority voters. Even more so, this article here, guys, where he's traveling to South Carolina. Representative Jim Clyburn is a Democrat in South Carolina. Now, of course, because of Representative Clyburn and a lot of other individuals there helped South Carolina basically give their votes to President Biden. The problem is, this is the second go around. And a lot of black voters, and I hate to say this, a lot of black voters are not so easily ready to give the Democratic vote to Biden again. Because here's the thing, and I've been saying this. Now, of course, I'm not Democratic or Republican. I always say to myself, I'm progressive. I am progressive, which means there's some things that conservatives will definitely not agree with me on, but at the same time, Democrats may not agree with me on, because I think these are measures that these are measures that I think are need to be put in that transcends party lines. But like I said, sometimes it falls on deaf ears. The problem with Biden is that Biden has not, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. The problem with President Biden has not gone far enough to show black voters why they should basically nominate him again. I mean, he went to a church, which again, I've told you guys many a times that of all the places to meet black people, representatives, whether they're running for representatives or senators, it always kills me how we always got to wind up in church. And I'm like, church, I understand historically was the center point for black people to meet at, but there are other places for all those that are running in office. There are other places where you can actually talk to black folks without being under the banner of a religious institution. But that being said, Biden's going to have a problem because I have talked with individuals out there and they've always said the same thing. What has Biden done for me? Or what has Biden done for black people? Because that's what voters are going to say. And some people sit there and say, well, I don't understand. Where I'm like, oh, I completely get where they're coming from. Because you have a lot of eligible voters out there that are disenfranchised, dismayed. They have low wages. Everything's higher. They're probably not looking too forward to their tax returns because of the tax laws have been put in. Even though there's still a chance that child care tax credit may be increased. But hey, if you're single, you don't have any children, and you work in America, guess what? You get taxed the hardest, which is completely unfair. But again, black people are asking, what has Biden done for us? And I have been sitting there saying this, screaming it from the rooftops. If Biden wants to get the black vote, and no disrespect to Ice Cube, who tried with Trump to negotiate the black vote with a contract, and it failed miserably. No disrespect to Ice Cube. He tried. But if Biden wants to get the black vote, he is going to have to be progressive. You guys remember a long time ago where Biden sat there and said, I want to increase the minimum wage? He sat there and said $7.29 has gone on too long. Let me increase the minimum wage. And people are going, well, why increase that? Well, if you increase the minimum wage, every state has to increase their wages. Now, if you're in the South, like me in Tennessee, the minimum wage is still $7.29. Now, I don't know about you guys and the cost of getting an apartment or a house or renting a house or just getting any type of lodgings. You cannot get anything on $7.29. I know some cities and states have raised it to $10, $15. Again, it is poverty wages. No one can live off these wages. No one can successfully live off anything less than $25 an hour. That's the truth. At the same time, Biden has a golden opportunity right now to be progressive. I want to increase the minimum wage, but let's increase the minimum wage to meet today's standards and inflation, meet the rate of inflation, which means that the minimum wage the minimum wage at the moment would be somewhere between $27 to $29 an hour, give or take. But think about that. If the minimum wage in America was 28, well, let's just say the minimum wage in America was $28 an hour. That means every job has to start off with $20 an hour. That means people get paid more. Well, what about the widow? And I can hear the conservatives now. Oh, Will, what about the small businesses that now they're going to have to increase their prices, or they're just going to have to close their doors and lose jobs? No, they won't. Because I've always said this. That's the scare tactic. If you increase the wages on workers, they always talk about companies will shut down, loss of jobs. Yet companies right now have the biggest tax breaks outside of rich people. Companies do, because we've seen what they did with the PPP program. Almost $780 billion was loaned out. Only 767 was recovered. Only 767 was forgiven. So they're gonna be all right. But look at the American people. Like I said, going back to black voters do come from these areas that are low income. They do come from these areas where there was a lack of financial literacy. They do come from these areas where education was not as equal as to other areas that actually had more funding. At the same time, you're going to these people and saying, hey, vote for me. But at the same time, you're not giving any incentive. Again, raising the minimum wage, codifying Roe versus Wade, actually ensuring that women have rights to their bodies. You may never get Roe versus Wade back, but you can codify abortion and make it legal. You can also, and I'm saying this with all the sincerity in the world, and I say this once and I'll say it again, the president that gets marijuana legalized and taxed is the individual that'll be president. If you simply ran on it. And the funny part is you have Democrats urging the Biden administration to deschedule marijuana. What does that mean? That means that to deschedule marijuana takes out the Controlled Substance Act altogether, which makes it legal to be taxed, which means, again, those who are fans of the plant, those that benefit from it, could actually have it legally. Now, I know in some states, I want to say, if I'm remembering correctly, 13 states, as of right now, marijuana is legal. And those 13 states don't have money problems. I always use Denver, Colorado as a shining example, because once Colorado became legal to smoke weed, their revenue streams went out the window. Companies developed out of nowhere. Jobs opened up out of nowhere. At the same time, they had to decriminalize it, which means that, guess what? Especially if you're here in the South and you're here and you're in jail on marijuana charges, you could walk free. Or if you're getting tested, marijuana cannot be included on the illegal substance list unless you are operating, which they did say, unless you're going to be in a highly sensitive area, which causes to have precognitive focus, would be the only reason they would test for marijuana if this passed. But again, a shining example of what you can do for American people. You can sit there and say, you've made marijuana legal. You can sit there and say, I've increased the minimum wage. You can sit there and say, let me do the things for Black people. I know a lot of people say, well, that just sounds like Obama. I said, Obama didn't try. Obama was doing his best with a Congress that was against him. For a lot of people that don't remember, when President Obama got elected, he did not have a Congress behind him. He had a wall of red conservatives, and Mitch McConnell saying on the day of his inauguration that they will make sure that President Obama is a one-term president. Could you imagine historically being the first Black president of the United States and a white man is sitting there telling the American people, we're going to make sure you're a one-term president? What can a man do with that? Even honestly, that with being said, he still accomplished what he accomplished, which I still thought was amazing. But going back to Biden, could he do it? Yes, he could. But he has to put in incentives for minorities. Like, again, he could actually turn around and say about government grants for minorities. You could turn around and do the thing that Trump was supposed to do for HBCUs, ensure that they do get the funding that they need. You could, again, help out with literacy for areas of low income, increasing literacy, removing food deserts, actually doing government grants for farming, specifically located for Black farmers. You could literally, and this is why I keep saying, guys, the entire time when it comes to Biden, the ability he has there to sit there and literally go on a full-on progressive campaign is there. Whether he chooses to do that or not will depend on whether or not he gets the Black vote, because no offense to Mr. Obama, let that man have his vacation. He did his 8 years. Of course, they'll probably in some way or form try to bring him back to get attention to the base, which means him and Michelle. It's almost like we love the Obamas, but let them go. They've done their job. You can't keep asking Michelle. You can't keep asking Barack to come back in and save your party when you're really too chicken shit to do what you should have done in the first place. Be progressive and watch what happens. But speaking of things that I never thought I would call, because again, the albatross, as I call him, to Biden's administration, or I should say the main reason why he is no longer progressive, but very middle of the road as a modern Democrat, Senator Joe Manchin says that he might think about running for presidency because, again, of Biden's age and the fact that not too many people like Trump, and because he's running as an independent. Keep in mind about Joe Manchin, for all those that don't remember, this is the same man that voted not to codify Roe versus Wade. It's the same man that voted down the Voting Rights Act. It's the same man that voted down on the Build Back America plan. It's the same man that voted down multiple stimulus checks to the American people because he believed it would cost too much. He also helped depower the EPA because he's actually from West Virginia. West Virginia is a coal mining state. And of course, coal mining is a beyond dead business. But because Joe Manchin sits on a board for a coal mining business, and yet no one sees this as conflict of interest, decide to help himself. This is the same man that is considering running for office as an independent because he does not see himself as a Democrat. Obviously, he doesn't see himself as a Republican, even though he is a Democrat in a Republican-controlled state. I'm sorry. Joe Manchin, to me, like I said, is the albatross to the Biden administration when he tried to actually do an open progressive platform. And of course, him and Kristen Sinema killed it single-handedly. But we shall see if Manchin runs or not, because honestly, I think he's full of shit. But you guys, like I said before, getting back to what I talked about at the beginning of the show, I said that two things were going on this week. That, well, one was Taylor Swift, and of course, the one with the border. Now, you're probably wondering, well, you don't really seem like a Swiftie. I got nothing against Taylor Swift. You know, she's America's sweetheart. Seems to be making a lot of hit songs. Touring has done very well, and is apparently dating Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs. All that is irrelevant because for an individual who is a singer who is simply trying to support her boyfriend, even though Simone Biles and her husband don't get that same type of shine, but I digress. You'd be surprised how the GOP is acting, because you would think, okay, it's a celebrity couple. Why do I care? The GOP does.
Now that Taylor Swift's boyfriend is going to the Super Bowl, right-wing media is really worried about the impact of one in particular.
Now there's an online plea circulating that is begging people to become Niners fans for the next 2 weeks, just so it doesn't raise Travis Kelce, a.k.a. Mr. Pfizer's star power, along with, of course, Taylor Swift.
That's persuadable power. And this administration is locked dead set on harnessing that.
But why alienate your fans, the Swifties? You know, they come across from every political ideology. Why put yourself in one area?
Please don't believe everything Taylor Swift says. We're all begging you.
So when it comes to some people losing their minds over the pop star, Vivek takes the cake. Ramaswamy says that the NFL is rigging the Super Bowl to give Taylor Swift more airtime ahead of her endorsement of Joe Biden. Jamel Hill is a contributing writer for The Atlantic, and she joins me now. Jamel, that is quite a conspiracy, I have to say.
Look, as it is, it's been super annoying to see people really lose it over Taylor Swift being at NFL games. All right. I can tell you, I don't care. She doesn't take away from any of my enjoyment from the game. But a lot of people have been complaining, a lot of hardcore football fans who melt down for the 15 seconds that she's seen on camera. And this is taking it to a new level. Listen, we know the group that he's talking to. And as much as Vivek was trying to be tongue in cheek, the reality is that that's the kind of group that he's talking to a lot of times that will take things like that very seriously and think that this is some greater NFL conspiracy to have Taylor Swift in the Super Bowl, that it's all a part of some elaborate scheme because Travis Kelce has been a spokesperson for Pfizer. And not only is it ridiculous, and frankly, it insults the intelligence of the American people, but it is unfortunately showing just how divisive our politics have become, that you can't even enjoy the Super Bowl without somebody throwing this cloud of suspicion and total rampant, unattributable speculation behind this event.
So what's crazy about this? Again, guys, whether you love Taylor Swift or don't like her, that's not the point. The point is where Fox News decided to focus all their hatred once more. Oh, well, what about her endorsement? What about her endorsement for presidency? What will she tell all of her fans? Because Taylor Swift, like many other celebrities, use their platform, especially during elections, to sit there and say, get out and vote, get to know the candidates, things of that nature. That's usually all they say. But now they're worried that Taylor Swift, who has spoken out against Donald Trump, has spoken out against about Roe vs. Wade being shot down, And now the GOP look at her as enemy number one because she has a wave of fans, a wave of voter eligible fans. Keep in mind, I've said it once, I'll say it again. The GOP does not care as long as they remain in power by any means necessary. And so what they say, oh, well, we don't need Taylor Swift there because again, there was a whole thing about Taylor Swift attending his games and that they focus too much on her and that, oh, I just don't want to see her at my games anymore. That's the public. The GOP sees it as she will turn around and tell her base not to vote for us, and they'll listen. But let's do our best to smear her. Let's do our best to then say, oh, don't listen to her. Oh, don't do this. Oh, don't do that. They will do their best to turn around and sit there and say to all those voters, because like I said, she has a lot of followers. She has a lot of followers, a lot of fans, and a lot of them are voter eligible. Keep in mind, I've said it once and I'll say it again about this election. The two biggest groups of people voting are women and minorities. And I'll say it once and I'll say it again. Women have to be the most ticked off group in this because, number one, Roe versus Wade was shot down. Abortion is not legal, but you either have to go to a different state or go to extreme measures, especially if you're pregnant or if you're raped, which we found out in Texas, where literally 26,000 women who were impregnated by rape were forced to carry because in Texas, abortion is legal. Abortion is legal, and those who try to practice abortion are literally imprisoned. So imagine under a state where abortion is illegal, unless you're the mistress of a GOP person, all of a sudden it's God's will. But for the rest of those people who are not so lucky, you are forced to carry a child against your will. And I've said this before about women. Y'all are going to be the most pissed off group of voters. And I, for the life of me, could not imagine any woman voting conservative against their own rights for a party that sees you as nothing more than a breeding machine. They do. And again, I've always said it best. A woman's body is her own choices. A woman's body is her own right. The choices and consequences are hers and hers alone. What she chooses to do with her body is her own effing business. That's how it should be. Because if you turn around and do that to a man and say, oh, well, you can't do that. We have to protect the essence of life. There'll be riots in the streets. So again, I say to women, I would hope during this election, you guys make your voice loud and clear. But going back to Taylor Swift, however, they're scared of the influence that she has. And any influence that is not on the GOP is literally seen as a threat, regardless of whether they have football or not. But again, I don't see Simone Biles and her husband get the same love. But moving right along, guys. Another story that just came out of New York about two men who basically were terrorists. But again, when you hear the details of the story, you're going to wonder how nobody knew about it.
Together about the two brothers who they say were anything but friendly. Authorities, federal agents, NYPD bomb squad were searching here and they had to evacuate this building because of what they found. Not just the ghost guns they were looking for, but all kinds of homemade explosives and a hit list.
One wrong mix of chemicals or one wrong wire could have taken that whole building down.
The ghost guns were just the tip of the iceberg. The search warrant carried out at the Astoria apartment uncovered these homemade explosive devices, some of them in the same container.
Had one of those IEDs detonated, it would likely have resulted in a shock wave that would have detonated the remaining explosives.
There were anti-government ramblings in writing and a hit list mentioning cops and judges.
A lot of writings of quotes from Charlie Manson, a lot of harm to others.
And the more they searched, the more they found.
9 additional functional smoke bombs, which can be used to divert attention. 1 partially constructed AK-47 style ghost gun, over 600 rounds of ammunition, 1 3D printer.
Neighbors looked out the window on the freezing cold morning of January 17th, seeing Homeland Security and NYPD investigators who would evacuate the building as they searched the second-floor apartment.
There's a disconnect.
Shailene Heffernan says the family downstairs, including the brothers Andrew and Angelo Hatziagelis, who have now been indicted on 130 charges, seemed bitter, angry, and rude.
It just goes to show you what kind of
headspace they're in and how I couldn't interact or engage with them.
Authorities say their ideology was extreme anti-government, a combination of far left and far right, and as of now not connected to any known networks. But they do represent a type of threat becoming more common.
The lone actor threat, really complicated, very difficult to qualify, doesn't fit neatly into a box. And unfortunately, that's the wave of the future. We're going to be seeing cases that look like a little bit of a lot of different things all at once.
Now, there's no evidence at this time that these men had any plans to use their devices or who specifically was on their list. But Bill and Sandra, as you mentioned earlier, this apartment building is right next to a Con Ed plant. Authorities say this community is safer thanks to this indictment and their arrests. They face up to 25 years in prison.
So the one thing I didn't understand out of this is not terrorism. I'm sorry. There are two brothers that were literal. They had manifestos about the government, ammunition. Again, as a gun owner, I don't see the point of having when you have to have and maybe. And again, I can be short-sighted. I'm not a competition shooter. I am not a guy that goes around the country being a firearms instructor. Those are the only people I know that can have that many rounds and yet have reasonable justification. But when you have over 600 rounds in your apartment, you have ghost guns, improvised devices, and you're right next door to a power plant in New York. How are we not saying terrorists? I mean, that sounds like terrorism to me. And yet, not a word of it being said. It's almost like, why in the world can we not say anything about terrorism when you see it? And again, I can go on the fact about ghost guns. I talked about them last year. I sat there and said that ghost guns are not regulated. Practically anybody can still buy them. Ghost guns with a little bit of know-how, and the stuff is literally on YouTube to where it can show you how to make a functioning firearm with no serial number. This is the whole entire reason why ghost guns are popular, because they're hard to track. And at the same time, 3D printed parts will work in them. But again, I digress. Glad those people were caught. Hopefully they get the book thrown at them, literally and figuratively. But we're going to switch to Trump for a second, guys, just because, well, Trump is fighting a lot of things, specifically the ballots. I talked about this story, guys, a couple podcasts back, because Colorado was doing it. The Colorado Supreme Court took Trump off their ballot, so he can't qualify to run for president in their state. And now Illinois almost did it. Illinois initially decided to take Trump off the ballot, and yet a bipartisan state board voted unanimously to restore Trump back on the Illinois 2024 ballot. Now, I've been saying this, guys. This might be the way to get rid of Trump. Now, again, I know every state is different. Every state is different. But imagine if the states that counted in the Electoral College, what if California decided to disqualify Trump from being on the ballot using the 14th Amendment as a reason? What if New York? What if Michigan? What if Ohio? If we'll just Ohio, Ohio is usually a conservative state. But let's just say the states with the most electoral college votes decided to remove Trump from their ballots, which means that he could not win votes in those states. Could keep him from winning the presidency. And at the same time, it would make the GOP mad, because the GOP is all about states' rights. States are exercising their rights to keep Trump off the ballot, and the GOP are still mad, which lets you know that the GOP is full of shit. But again, Illinois is unfortunately one of those states that want to keep Trump on the ballot. But I just think it's interesting that by removing him in this area, even if these cases and indictments don't put him in a jumpsuit somehow, he still may lose out on being the president. If only other states would really use the 14th Amendment and say, yes, you started an insurrection, which Colorado said beyond a shadow of a doubt, and obviously evidence is there. But if every other state started doing that, we wouldn't have to worry about Trump winning the nomination. Well, I mean, if he won the nomination, he couldn't win presidency. But the other thing I want to talk about Trump is that Tim Scott, good God almighty. I usually call him America's Uncle Tom. Now I'm calling him America's Pick Me. Why? Because I've said before, Trump pretty much had the nomination won. Now, well, I mean, I don't see Nikki Haley winning. I'm just going to be honest about that. But what I'm getting at is now is the race for second. And if you guys haven't noticed, Tim Scott, who tried to sit there and say Trump was unqualified, has a complete 180 and is wanting to be the VP so hard that he is going around basically playing I hate to say it, but it's the best way I can say it. He's basically playing Trump's new black friend. He's a new Kanye, just less crazy. But listen to him in this interview try to defend Trump.
Carolina Senator Tim Scott was standing with Trump as he declared victory in New Hampshire on Tuesday. And Senator Scott joins us now. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to start with the breaking news on Friday, and that was that your candidate, former President Trump, was ordered by a jury to pay $83 million for defaming writer E. Jean Carroll. He was also found before, as you know, liable for sexual abuse. Does that give you any pause in your support?
You know, myself and all the voters that support Donald Trump supports a return to normalcy as it relates to what affects their kitchen table. The average person in our country, Martha, they're not talking about lawsuits. As a matter of fact, what I have seen, however, is that the perception that the legal system is being weaponized against Donald Trump is actually increasing his poll numbers.
I understand that, but they were jury trials. They were jury trials. They started when Donald Trump was president. That gives you no pause whatsoever.
I don't have the Democrats don't pause when they think about Hunter Biden and the challenges that he brings to his father. The one thing I think the electorate is thinking about most often is how in the world will the next president impact my quality of life? How will America regain its standing in this world? They were better off under Trump, and they're looking for 4 more years of low inflation, low crime, low unemployment, and high enthusiasm for our country. We haven't had that in the last 4 years.
I spoke to a lot of voters this week, and I do want to go back to Tuesday night and even before that. Donald Trump had an incredibly strong victory in Iowa. Of course, New Hampshire, a double-digit lead. He is clearly the front runner, but those are just 2 states.
Yes.
And you just heard about Nikki Haley's fundraising ability.
Yes.
Why should she drop out?
Well, there's 2 things for sure. Number one, Donald Trump gets more earned media, probably $1 billion already, because of who he is and what's going on around him. Number one. Number two, I think he was outspent in Iowa and New Hampshire by his opponents. One thing we know for sure, as this race turns to South Carolina, that the enthusiasm in South Carolina for the former president has never been higher. I've seen polls that suggest he's up by 20 points. I'd make a prediction that he wins by more than 20% in South Carolina. But yes, there's only been two competitions so far. Here's what I'll tell you. My theory is a simple one. When I dropped out of the race in November, it was because the writing was clear on the wall then. It is now more clear that what Republicans, conservatives, and a lot of independents want today is 4 more years of Donald Trump.
Trump showed weakness among independents, however, a group that he would need if he tries to win in November. Nikki Haley won 60% of self-identified independents in the state. How does he win over those voters?
Well, the numbers coming out of New Hampshire are really impressive. I'm not an analyst. You're an expert at this, Martha. But I will say one of the things I found to be surprising and positive is that amongst millennial voters, President Trump won 58 to 38. There was a 20-point gap among young voters. Among women voters in New Hampshire, where liberals, Democrats, and independents voted in the Republican primary, President Trump beat Nikki Haley among women. So when I think about the fact that African Americans at the highest level in my lifetime is looking at a Republican over 20%, Hispanics over 40%. This is a good time to be running as a Republican.
Okay, I want to stop you there because
Yes, we all want to stop you there. In the words of Professor Cornel West, Tim Scott, how much are they paying you? It's not enough. But then again, I don't like as much as I joke about this, guys, as much as I joke, it's a pick me situation. Tim Scott is basically saying, "Oh, pick me. I'll be your VP." Because I said this before, guys. The GOP needs minority faces. Tim Scott's the only black person. Tim Scott is the only black senator in the GOP. He is. So of course, him, going to bat for Trump, going on different networks saying, "Oh, well, this, that, and the other," BSing his way through facts and numbers. He is basically saying to Trump, "Pick me, I'll be your Negro. You did it for Kanye. Why not me?" And the rest of us are just simply going, if this ain't the biggest Sambo minstrel show shit I have ever seen, because it is, that a man will sit there and say he wants to be a VP so bad that he'll go out here and campaign. And like I usually say, for a lot of these brands that you never see commercials for, but you always see people advertising, that's Tim Scott right now. He's basically going out there because Donald Trump is saying, "Oh well, let me when he was in South Carolina, let me bring up a great man, Tim Scott." And Tim Scott kissed his ass so much, I'm surprised he didn't pull back orange dye. But again, he's a pick me now. Uncle Tom wants to be a pick me for VP, and it will willing to go to great lengths. While Nikki Haley is struggling with civics, Ron DeSantis has figured out that you are definitely dictator material, just not presidential material. But then again, those are GOP's choices. That alone should tell you everything you want to know. But stories, guys, we're going to get to before we get to our feel good segment. This guy, White Lives Matter member, gets 18 years for firebombing church that planned drag events because the church itself he considered demonic for planning an LGBTQ plus event. And I am in Penny is the guy's name, and said he based on the FBI, quote unquote, he would have felt better if his Molotov cocktails had burned an LGBTQ friendly church to the ground. And this is why I say about dangerous rhetoric, guys. I say this about rhetoric with these terrorists because what was GOP saying the whole entire time when they were attacking drag queens? A drag queen story time hour. Oh, we don't want our children subjected to this. We don't want our children sexualized to this. Meanwhile, the GOP has a hard time keeping their pants on with lovers, LGBTQ members, or all the above. And you have fools like this one, a part of the White Lives Matter group, that decided that he was going to bomb a church and got 18 years in prison. He did not apologize, but said that he was protecting children. Here's my thing about drag queens. I've never seen a drag queen bomb a church. I've never seen a drag queen take a child. I've never seen a drag queen denounce anything that was positive and upbeat. I've never seen drag queen burn books. I've never seen a drag queen decide to remove books from a library. I've never seen a drag queen decided that books that were written by people of color and by LGBTQ plus members don't belong in a library. I've never seen an LGBTQ person put in a law that says you can't talk about same-sex relationships and marriages from K through 12. I've never seen an LGBTQ person do any of these things. They're usually done by very, very disturbed nationalists and would-be twisted religious folks. Even now, the story I just read was a guy who literally said he's protecting children. You're protecting children by bombing a church. And for a lot of us, that should hit quite home because of that. But again, drag queens are the problem. Right. Last word I got, guys, before we get to our feel good news segment, UPS. You guys know that, over the summer last year and a little bit into the fall area, UPS almost had a strike. Thankfully avoided it. And of course, the drivers did get paid, hopefully air-conditioned trucks. Now UPS is citing to cut 12,000 jobs because they're saying that the demands have softened and that higher costs. Now, here's what we're talking about this, that the union jobs that actually fought for higher pay and benefits, things of that nature, none of those jobs are affected. This is actually going more toward the contractor and third-party jobs. For a lot of logistical companies, they do imply third-party drivers and contractors, which basically they still do work for UPS, but they go through the intermediary. Those are the guys those are the people they're talking about. Their jobs are going to be cut. None of the union jobs are going to be cut, but it's not being said. For a lot of areas, Fox News being one of them, they're not saying that the union jobs are not being affected. They're just leaving out there saying, well, they got their raises. So now that they got their raises, now the job's being cut, where they're not being completely honest about which jobs are being cut. And this is why I say it goes back to journalism, guys, that if the truth is not being properly told, misinformation is easy from that point. Now, do I feel for those contractors? Yes, because as a guy who used to be a contractor, I can't tell you how much I hate contracting. Contracting is almost like, it's literally like waking up to see if you still got a job. And I hate that. I hate that for people, because when you're a contractor, you don't know if you have a permanent job. You just know that if your badge works or the door opens or no one pulls you to the side, that you're okay for a day. And do I think that contracting work needs to have more guaranteed things? Absolutely. But again, that's another argument for another day. But we need to clarify that no union jobs were lost with UPS, even though they will sit there and say demand has softened. I'm sorry, because you haven't noticed between the three biggest logistical companies in the world, you usually hear UPS, FedEx, or maybe DHL, but you definitely hear FedEx or UPS. So, want to throw that out there. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our feel good segment, guys. It's usually on, because usually on How the Frack We Got Here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes they use your faith in humanity, but hey, it's Wednesday, it's hump day. Tomorrow's Friday Eve, which is Thursday. And we will leave you guys out some good vibrations. And hopefully this story that we're about to show does just that, because no matter what in school, whether you're an educator or a janitor, you have a positive impact on kids if your spirit is right. And this man right here, well, let's just say he's the captain.
Across the country, and this morning, it's all about Ray Bethea. He's a custodian at a community high school in Swannanoa, North Carolina. But to the students and teachers there, he is so much more. Ike Ajachi's there for a big surprise. Good morning, Ike.
Good morning. Listen, Captain Ray is just behind this door. He has no idea what's going on. He thinks he's in an important meeting with the vice principal, but of course, we got some tricks up our sleeve. Let's go get him. Captain Ray, my man, how you doing?
Good, how we doing?
I'm all right. I'm Ike Ajachi with Good Morning America. You're live on air with the rest of the country right now. Why don't you say hello?
Hello.
Mr. Robinson, can we borrow him real quick?
Absolutely.
All right, come on out here. Captain Ray, nice to meet you. Listen, you've been a head custodian here for over a decade. Everyone says that you helped make this building feel so much more than a school. The people say that when they come in here, it feels like home. Feels so much like home. So today is all about you. And before we go in there, you might need this real quick. Come here. Today is all about you. We have students, college. Today's all about you. We have students, your colleagues, obviously your wife is here. We have our mascot, Ray, right behind us. Everybody in here knows how much of a ray of sunshine you are. It's time for America to take a look too. In this North Carolina high school, custodian Mr. Ray Bethea is a ray of sunshine.
Anytime you walk into the building, he's always smiling or laughing.
Fist bumps here and there, and he always got his little hat on, his captain hat on.
He bought the hat, and he started wearing it at school, and everybody just started calling him Captain Ray.
But Captain Ray is more than a smiling face. He leans in.
If you're feeling down and you need somebody to talk to, Mr. Ray is definitely the person to go to.
Whenever I get angry or anything, he'll take me downstairs. We play basketball.
I came here my freshman year after my dad passed away, and I had no friends, nobody to talk to. Mr. Ray was the first person to talk to me. If he wasn't in my life, I don't think I would have made it as far as I have.
And when 11th grader Harmony wanted to drop out of school,
Mr. Ray was her North Star, keeping her on the right path.
I was kind of like an outcast to most people. I stopped coming to school and he started like realizing I didn't want to be here very much. And then one day he saw me sitting in the hallway crying and he was basically just there for me. And then he just walked around with me afterwards and calmed me down. He's like a comfort space in school. Like whenever you have no one to run to, you can go to him.
And when health and PE teacher Calvin Cross was down on his luck, Ray stepped up.
Food in the house, gas in my car, a man of faith that you can call on for anything.
I think he's more than just a janitor that cleans up messes. I think he cleans up people's minds. He's probably the most thoughtful custodian at any school ever.
Ray makes everybody feel like they matter. Every student in this building knows they matter.
And so to Captain Ray, we say, you're our ray of sunshine.
Every single person here came out for you. How do you feel right now?
That's awesome.
A man of little words, of course.
What a surprise. I'll just tell you, I'm always 2 or 3 steps ahead, so speculation is always in my mind. So when my wife was getting dressed, I said something's different.
Now we gotta get some people on this.
I said, come on now, y'all doing something different. I don't know what you're doing. My daughter, she played it off, and they all played it off. I said, something's wrong.
Well, something's right today. Something's right. Now listen, we gotta talk to some people here. Principal Kathy, where are you? Come on up here, please. Come on up. I gotta ask you, what kind of difference does it make to have someone like Captain Ray working inside your building?
He's approachable, he's authentic, he's present, he's enthusiastic, always willing to share a smile, and always willing to tell a story that ends with a positive life lesson for our kids.
How about that, huh? Now, Captain Ray, we saw that the work that you do doesn't only stop inside the building. It goes outside the building, helping people with their cars, their groceries, whatever they can think of. Where does this come from? Your spirit, your energy? How do you keep doing this?
Well, I just have to give God the glory because, again, that's where it started for me.
It's okay. You can take your time. Guys, how about the Captain right here? How? Now, Captain, there is so much love for you inside this room. I know you can feel it. We all can, obviously. We have a little surprise for you, okay? I'm getting a little excited right now. I almost want to dance on the ceiling. Hit that music right now! Now, we found out how much of a Lionel Richie fan you are. That's why we are sending you and your wife to go see him live in concert in Las Vegas, guys. Listen. Now, you're getting 2 round trips to Las Vegas. That's from the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. Plus, you're getting a dinner for 2 and a 2-night stay at Caesar's Palace. And someone told me you've never even flew before. How do you feel, man? How do you feel?
I can tell you the Bible said, lo, he'll be with you, but I think that's a first time for everything.
Right. But never a last time for love. Give it up, guys.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool because, again, whether, like I said, whether you're an educator or a custodian, if you have an impact on people, it shows. And of course, that man right there, Captain Ray, definitely enjoys it. Hopefully, it's a safe flight to go see Lionel Richie. But still, you gotta love. When you do good, you do good. People, put good out in the universe comes back to you, so they say. But anyway, that's gonna do it for this podcast, guys. Thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Some shameless plugging before we do get here, guys. Shout out to Vaughn and Big VZA Dot. You can definitely check him out, Big VZA Dot, on all social media for beats and his beat page on YouTube. Oh, excuse me. Again, for myself, guys, Black Fox 447 on the socials. Just because I do cover a lot of things, including gym stuff. Just because I like working out, it relaxes the mind. I certainly kind of miss it, but that's okay. The link at the bottom, maybe make that a little bit bigger for you guys to see. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, it'll take you to our link tree, the YouTube and Facebook group for all of our podcasts. How the Frack We Got Here. Get bitten off on this podcast. Like, share, subscribe. Guys, I say this on every podcast that I'm on. We cannot do this without you. I mean that wholeheartedly, which means that just don't like and walk off. Tell people about it. Share it. I hear people walk up to me, especially in Nashville, all the time. Oh, I heard about your show. I love it. And this thing. Okay, cool. Tell people, tell more people, because again, the mission of How the Frack We Got Here is about informing you. Don't fall for the misinformation. Really go out there. Really get to know your city. Get to know your town. Get to know what's going on, the ins and outs. Because trust me, once you do find out those things are going on, you will not be the same. You will be better for it. And as we wrap this up, guys. Oh, before we wrap this up, I want to talk about Blur Station. Again, I am a part of a collective that is a part of a new engine called BlurStation.com. It is for people of color. It is for blurs and for nerds, because if you like comics, we got those. If you like shows with movies, we got those. If you like certain catchy things of a blurred nature, they're there too. You can definitely check them out at BlurStation.com. Again, if you guys want to join, do me a favor, please go to the Join Now button. And then once there, select the Blurred's Eye View Affinity membership. Select any member there. We all benefit, guys. It definitely helps us out. And of course, it's $10.99 a month. Yes, $10.99 a month. You can still watch streaming services and still order food. I don't know about you, but that's a plus. At the same time, guys, with the Affinity membership, it's 36 months. After those 36 months of paying $10.99 a month, you're getting something that very rarely gets handed unless you go through E-Trade or Affiliate Investments. You get to own shares of Blur Station. Yes, after 36 months at $10.99 versus what, Amazon, Hulu, Netflix Prime, going through E-Trade or whatever your investment place is, paying an assload amount of money just for one or two shares. Where, I'm sorry, 36 months at $10.99 seems a lot better to me. And again, it's for the culture. So definitely check out BlurStation.com. Again, check out the Blur's Eye View Affinity membership. Help us. Because again, if a lot of people are sitting there saying, well, there's not a lot of content there. Well, I can answer that, fancy pants. Also go to the FAQ side of it. Because the reason why, if you believe that you can bring content, and I keep saying this, especially for those that are learning about Tubi. Because if you didn't learn from Tubi, guys, for a lot of their stuff, people were able to get their movies out there, and maybe some of them did get paid, maybe some of them didn't. Maybe some of them were allowed to own their content. I know a lot of them didn't. Why? Because again, Tubi is owned by the same guy who owns Fox. And now Tubi's worth over $100 million. So again, why not go to a spot that you can own your own content, you can put a little money in your pocket, and again, help us grow something that is made to last only if we all work together. So definitely check out BlurStation.com. Again, guys, as we are in the election season for our presidential nomination, I cannot stress this enough. We can no longer sit on the sidelines. We can no longer hope to God that the lesser of two evils is it. We are not a two-party system. We're actually a multi-party system. At the same time, guys, if you don't like the choices, there are plenty of sites out there that'll help you figure out how you can run, not just from a federal standpoint, but also for your local areas, for your local and state governments. Get to know those folks, get to know the candidates, get to know the issues. Again, if you don't like what's going on or don't like your choices, then run. Be active, be informed. That is how we can change into a more progressive society, which when we're progressive, we do move forward. And that's the whole point of How the Frack We Got Here. Because again, it's all about information. We do our best to give you our information without bias from reputable sources, but we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do better as society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past for making decisions now that we should have done back then. Like electing our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black woman to be the National Cybersecurity Advisor. All great things. we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up in our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians, but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the frack we got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll get through this. Peace.